The moment the survival app on my wrist flashes red, I already know I'm dead. 99%. That's the number staring back at me in the middle of a storm-black ocean, rain hammering my face, salt water choking my lungs, the wreckage of a cruise liner sinking behind me like a dying whale. 99% chance of death within 72 hours, 1% chance of survival, and somehow, out of 400 passengers, out of every single person on that ship, I'm the one whose number is the worst. I should be flattered. Instead, I'm drowning. My name is Eli Voss, and 3 days ago, I was nobody. Not the funny nobody, not the mysterious nobody, just the actual, forgettable, invisible nobody. 26 years old, fired from a job I hated, dumped by a girl who called me comfortable like that was an insult, and boarding a discount cruise to nowhere because my one friend felt sorry for me. That's the whole resume. That's the guy the ocean decided to swallow. Lightning rips the sky open and for half a second I see the island. Just a black shape against a blacker horizon. But it's there, and it's the only thing between me and forever. I don't remember deciding to swim toward it. My body just does it. Arms burning, lungs screaming, that stupid glowing number still blinking on my wrist like it's mocking me. 1%, 1%, 1%. Then my knees hit sand, and I stop counting anything at all. When I wake up, the storm is gone like it never happened, and the sky is the kind of blue that shouldn't exist after a night like that. My face is buried in sand that's way too soft, way too clean, like the ocean personally apologized for what it put me through. I sit up and my whole body screams. Every muscle feels like it's been wrung out and thrown away. But I'm alive. I'm alive! That should be the good part. It isn't. Because the second I sit up, the number on my wrist changes. Not a survival app anymore. Not something from my phone, because my phone is somewhere at the bottom of the Pacific with everything else I owned. This is on my skin now, glowing faint blue under a thin, translucent panel that definitely was not there yesterday, like my arm grew a screen overnight. And it says something that makes my stomach drop harder than the ocean ever did. Survival probability, 1%. Recalculating. I stare at it so long my eyes water. Then, right underneath, new text bleeds into existence. Letter by letter, like something is deciding whether I'm worth talking to. Welcome, Anchor. You have been selected as the last viable host for this island's core. I laugh. I actually laugh, alone, on a beach, half dead, because that sentence makes 0 sense and my brain has officially broken. And that's when the ground under me hums. Not shakes, hums, low and deep, like the entire island just took a breath. Somewhere behind the tree line, something roars, and it is not a sound any animal on Earth is supposed to make. I freeze. Whatever that thing is, it's close. And apparently I just woke it up. Here's what I didn't know yet. Standing there soaked and terrified and 1% likely to survive the week. The ship I was on didn't sink by accident. The island I washed up on isn't on any map, not because it's small, but because something has been keeping it hidden for longer than anyone alive. And the system now glowing on my arm wasn't giving me a survival tip. It was giving me a warning. I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew was that a roar like a landslide was rolling toward me through the jungle. My legs felt like wet paper, and the only advantage I had in the entire world was a translucent blue panel that thought a 1% survival rate was worth bragging about. I run. Obviously I run. Anyone would run. I don't even pick a direction, I just go, crashing through undergrowth that scratches every inch of exposed skin, branches snapping against my face, my bare feet finding every root and rock on the entire island like they're personally targeting me. Behind me, the roar comes again, closer, and this time I hear something else under it. Footsteps, heavy ones. Whatever it is, it's not flying and it's not slithering. It's running, on legs, like it wants this to be personal. The panel on my wrist keeps flickering. Useless little status updates scrolling past while I'm sprinting for my life. Heart rate critical. Stamina, 22%. Threat detected, unknown. Thanks, genuinely helpful. I didn't know my heart rate was critical. I thought I was just casually jogging away from certain death. Then the trees open up into a clearing, and I make the second worst decision of my life, which is stopping to look back. It's not an animal, not fully. It's built like something between a wolf and a man, hunched but tall. black fur matted with what I really hope is mud, and its eyes catch what little light filters through the canopy and throw it back gold. It sees me seeing it, and it smiles. I didn't know things like that could smile. I wish I still didn't know. Nope, I say out loud, to nobody, to the universe, to whatever cosmic committee decided I deserved a 1% survival rating. Nope, nope, nope. I turn to run again, and my foot catches a root, and the ground disappears from under me. And for one horrible weightless second, I think this is it. This is how the story ends. Some guy nobody will miss, eaten on an island nobody can find. Then I'm falling, actually falling, down a slope hidden by ferns, tumbling and rolling and slamming into something that knocks the air clean out of my lungs. I land hard at the bottom of a shallow ravine, dazed, dirt in my mouth, ribs screaming. Above me, at the top of the slope, the wolf thing skids to a stop at the edge, snarling, pacing, clearly furious that gravity did its job for it. It doesn't follow. It just paces back and forth along the ridge like there's an invisible wall it refuses to cross, and after what feels like an hour but is probably 10 seconds, it throws its head back and lets out one more bone-shaking roar before melting back into the jungle. I lie there in the dirt, alive, shaking and laughing again, that same broken laugh from the beach. Because apparently the only reason I'm not dead is that I fell down a hole. That's my superpower. Falling. Great start to the story of my life on this island. That's when the panel on my wrist lights up again, and this time it doesn't feel random. Safe zone detected. Core fragment located. Survival probability, 4%. 4%. I went from 1 to 4 just by rolling down a ditch. I should feel insulted. Instead, lying broken and bleeding at the bottom of a ravine that some system apparently considers a safe zone, I feel something I haven't felt in a long, long time. Hope. Stupid, fragile, 4% hope. I push myself up onto my elbows and that's when I see it, half buried in the dirt wall of the ravine, glowing the exact same soft blue as the panel on my arm. A shard of something crystalline, no bigger than my fist, pulsing gently like it's breathing. I don't decide to touch it. My hand just moves there on its own, the way it moved toward the island last night, like some part of me already knows this matters more than anything I've ever touched in my life. The second my fingers close around it, the world goes white. When my vision clears, I'm still in the ravine, still filthy, still terrified, but the panel on my arm has exploded with information, more text than I can read at once, scrolling too fast. Words like core bond established and terraform protocol unlocked and anchor status confirmed, flashing by before settling into something almost like a menu, an actual menu, on my arm. Like I've become a video game character in the worst tutorial level of all time. And right at the top, in letters that pulse slow and steady, like a heartbeat, you are no longer just a survivor. You are the island's first and only caretaker. Build or be consumed. I stare at that sentence for a long time. Build or be consumed. Not exactly subtle, but underneath the terror, underneath the ribs that definitely bruised something important, a different feeling starts creeping in. One I haven't felt since before the layoffs, before the breakup, before I became the guy everyone quietly stopped inviting places. I feel needed. That should have been a warning sign. It wasn't. Not yet. Here's the thing nobody tells you about a system like this. It doesn't hand you power. It hands you a to-do list. My first real interaction with the core isn't some cinematic power-up. It's a prompt asking me to gather 10 pieces of dry driftwood and 3 palm fronds if I want a shelter that won't collapse the second it rains again. I'm standing in a ravine with a monster somewhere above me and a magic crystal fused into my palm, and the system's opening move is basically, go do some chores. I do the chores. What else am I supposed to do? I drag driftwood, I strip palm fronds until my hands blister, and every single task I complete makes that panel tick upward, just slightly. 3%, 6%, 9%. It's the slowest, most humiliating video game tutorial imaginable, except every point of progress is the difference between living and not, and I have never in my life cared this much about collecting sticks. By the time the sun starts dipping low enough to paint the water gold, I've got a lean-to that would embarrass a Boy Scout, a fire I somehow managed to start after 40 humiliating minutes of failure, and a survival rating that's crawled all the way up to 15%. 15. It sounds pathetic. It feels like winning the lottery. That's when I hear the voices. Not the wolf thing. Human voices. Actual human voices. Carried on the wind from somewhere down the beach. And my heart does something complicated. Relief and dread at the exact same time. Because if there are other survivors from the ship, that means I'm not alone on this island. It also means I'm not the only one who might have found something like this crystal in my palm. I follow the voices along the tree line, staying low, staying quiet. Some instinct I didn't know I had telling me not to just walk out into the open. What I find when I finally get close enough to see is a cluster of maybe a dozen people around a huge bonfire on the main beach, wreckage from the ship dragged up onto the sand, a whole little camp already forming. And standing in the middle of it, arms crossed, chest out, already acting like he owns the place, is a guy I recognize instantly, because everyone on that cruise knew who Derek Kessler was within the first hour. Derek was the type of first-class passenger who complained about the thread count on complimentary towels. Built like he spent more time in a gym mirror than in an actual conversation, with the kind of jaw and confidence that made people assume he was in charge before he ever said a word. On the ship, he was just insufferable. Here, watching him boss around exhausted, terrified survivors like they're his personal staff, he's something worse. Rule 1. Derek's saying, loud enough that his voice carries all the way to where I'm hiding in the brush. Whatever you find on this island, you bring it to me first. We stay organized, we stay alive. Simple. A few people nod along, too shaken to argue. One woman, soot on her face, arms wrapped around herself, doesn't nod. She's watching Derek the way you watch a storm cloud, waiting to see which direction it breaks. I should have kept walking. I should have gone back to my pathetic lean-to and my 15% survival rate and figured this out alone. Instead, my stomach growls loud enough that I'm pretty sure the entire beach heard it, and before I can stop myself, I step out of the tree line with my hands raised like I'm surrendering to a hostage situation instead of just, saying hello. Every head turns. Derek's eyes land on me and narrow, doing that instant top-to-bottom scan some people do, sizing you up, deciding in half a second exactly how much you're worth to them. Well, he says, and there's already a smirk starting. Look what washed up. I didn't know it yet, standing there filthy and starving in front of a dozen strangers and one very obvious future problem, but that smirk was going to cost Derek Kessler everything. He just didn't know it yet either. For the first few days, being part of Derek's camp is almost a relief. There's a rhythm to it. People fishing, people gathering fruit, people rebuilding shelters that actually survive the wind. Derek's loud and arrogant, but he's also, annoyingly, decent at organizing people. And for a while I let myself think maybe this works out. Maybe I don't need whatever the glowing thing on my arm is trying to turn me into. Then Derek finds out about the crystal. I don't tell him. I'm not that stupid. But one of the other survivors, a wiry, anxious guy named Todd who latched onto me the first night because I was the only person who didn't immediately dismiss him, sees the panel light up on my wrist while I'm gathering firewood and, in a moment of pure nervous oversharing, mentions it to the wrong person around the campfire that night. Derek corners me the next morning, away from the others, that easy smile stretched a little too tight. Heard you've got a fancy new toy, he says. It's not a toy, I say, which is, in hindsight, exactly the wrong thing to say to a guy like Derek, because it confirms it's real, and it confirms it matters, and now his eyes have that specific gleam people get when they've spotted something they want. Great, he says, clapping a hand on my shoulder like we're old friends. Then it's camp property. Whatever it does, whatever it makes, it goes through me. We're a team here, Eli. Teams share. Here's what I've learned about guys like Derek. The word team only ever means one thing when they say it, and that thing is, everyone works so I don't have to. I should push back right then. I don't. Not yet. I'm still 15% likely to survive a hostile island, I'm exhausted, and a small, quiet, humiliating part of me is still the same guy who got walked over at his old job because arguing felt like too much effort. So for the next week, I do what I'm told. I quietly work the core in secret pockets of free time, gathering resources, unlocking tiny upgrades, and every single useful thing I build, Derek claims for the group, standing in front of it like he personally willed it into existence. A rainwater filtration basin the system helps me design becomes Derek's genius idea, a perimeter of sharpened stakes that finally finally keeps the wolf things from getting close at night becomes Derek's defense strategy. I watch him take a bow for my work so many times I start losing count. What I don't tell anyone, what I barely admit to myself, is that every single task I complete for the Corps, every stake I sharpen, every basin I dig, ticks my survival number up just a little more. 20%, 25. The system isn't just building the island, it's building me. And nobody in that camp has noticed that the quiet, humiliated guy doing all the actual work just got noticeably stronger. The reversal, when it comes, isn't dramatic. It's small and it's cruel, which somehow makes it worse. There's a storm coming, the sky bruising purple on the horizon 2 nights before it hits, and the Corps flags it immediately. A screaming red alert on my panel warning of flooding across the lower half of the beach where most of the shelters sit. I bring it straight to Derek. I tell him we need to move the camp uphill, that I can build something the storm won't touch, that I've already got the plans half drawn in my head from what the system's shown me. Derek laughs in my face. "You want me to tell 12 people to tear down their shelters?" he says, loud enough for everyone to hear, because of a hunch from the guy who talks to his wrist? No offense, but you're not exactly camp leadership material, Eli. A couple people laugh. Not unkindly, just nervously. The kind of laugh that happens when someone with power makes a joke and you're too scared to not laugh along. I feel my face go hot. I open my mouth to argue, and Derek cuts me off before I get a word out. "Tell you what," he says, and there's an edge under the friendliness now, sharp enough to cut. "You're so worried. Go build your little uphill hideout by yourself. Rest of us will be fine down here. We don't need your system. We've survived a week just fine without it. I want to say, you've survived a week because of it. I don't say it. I just nod, grab what little I own, and walk away from the fire while Derek's laughter follows me into the dark. That should have felt like losing. It didn't stay that way for long. Alone on the ridge above the main camp, with nobody watching, nobody taking credit, nobody laughing at my expense, something shifts. The Corps responds differently when there's no one to interrupt me, no one to claim my work as their own. Progress that took an hour in secret now takes 20 minutes in the open. I build a proper shelter into the hillside, reinforced with woven vines. The system somehow teaches me to braid stronger than rope. I dig channels to redirect runoff before the storm even arrives. My survival number climbs past 30, past 35, and for the first time since the ship went down, I'm not scrambling to survive. I'm building something. That's when the panel flashes an option I haven't seen before, one that makes my breath catch. Terraform available. Expand safe zone. I don't fully understand what it means until I try it, standing at the edge of my little hillside camp with my palm pressed flat against the packed earth, the way the system prompts me to. The ground hums, that same low breathing sound from my first morning on the island, and in front of my eyes, slow and impossible, a patch of scrubby, half-dead grass ripples and turns green, thick, healthy, alive. Vines climb a dead tree and burst into flower overnight. A trickle of water nearby widens into a clean, clear stream. I'm not just surviving this island anymore. I'm terraforming it, turning dead ground into something worth living on. One tiny patch at a time, I am, against every possible odd, actually starting to build a paradise. The storm hits 2 nights later, and it's worse than anyone in that camp imagined. I feel it before I see it, a pressure change in my ears, the Corps screaming warnings across my panel that the wind speed and rainfall are about to hit levels that will flood the lower beach entirely. From my ridge, I watch the wall of black cloud roll in over the ocean like the end of the world, and my first instinct, my only instinct, isn't relief that I'm safe up here. It's panic, because Todd is still down there. Because a dozen people who laughed along with Derek because they were scared, not because they were cruel, are still down there. I don't think. I just run. The wind hits like a wall of hands shoving me backward the second I clear the tree line onto the open beach. Rain needling sideways so hard it feels like gravel. The camp below is chaos. Shelters collapsing, people screaming over the roar of the storm, and Derek, of all people, standing in the middle of it, barking orders that nobody can hear and nobody can follow, because none of his leadership ever prepared for a night like this. "Get to the ridge!" I scream, over and over, grabbing anyone I can reach, shoving them toward the tree line, toward the shelter I built while they were laughing at me 2 nights ago. Some of them recognize me, and there's a half second on every single face, a flicker of shame, before survival instinct wins, and they run where I'm pointing. Then I see the wave. Not a normal wave. A surge, black and enormous, rolling in off the ocean like the storm has decided the beach isn't going to exist anymore, and Todd is directly in its path, frozen, staring at it with the kind of blank horror that means his body's already given up before his brain has. I don't remember deciding to move. I just do, sprinting flat out across sand that's already flooding around my ankles, and the panel on my arm is screaming something I don't have time to read, and I grab Todd by the collar and throw us both sideways as the wave crashes down where we were standing half a second earlier, close enough that the spray soaks us completely, close enough that if I'd been one heartbeat slower, we'd both be gone. We scramble up, soaked, coughing, alive, and that's when I see Derek. He's not helping anyone anymore. He's on his knees near the collapsed remains of the supply shelter, digging through wreckage with bare, bleeding hands, and for one confusing second, I think he's looking for someone trapped underneath. Then I see what he's actually doing, pulling out the crate of dried food and clean water they've been rationing all week, dragging it toward himself, away from the others, while people around him are literally being swept toward the surf. I've had a lot of moments on this island that reshaped how I see the world. That one might be the sharpest. Derek, I scream over the wind, and for a second his eyes meet mine, and there's no shame there at all, just calculation, just a guy protecting what he considers his. Someone's got to keep the supplies safe! He screams back, like that's a defense, like that's leadership, and I realize in that exact second, soaked and freezing and furious, that every single person on this beach has been building their survival around a man who was never actually protecting anyone but himself. I don't have time to argue. The storm doesn't care about anyone's ego, mine included. I spend the next 20 minutes doing the only thing that matters, hauling people up the slope one at a time, using every ounce of strength the Corps has quietly built into me over the past 2 weeks. Strength I didn't fully realize I had until I needed all of it at once. By the time the worst of the surge passes, every single survivor from that camp is standing soaked and shivering under the shelter I built on the ridge. Every single one except Derek, who drags himself up last, empty-handed, having lost half the supply crate to the tide anyway, looking for the first time since I met him, like a man whose confidence has finally run out of places to hide. Nobody says anything to him. They don't have to. The silence does it for them. That should have been the end of the tension between us. It wasn't, not even close. The morning after the storm, the sun comes up soft and gold over an island that looks almost gentle, like it's embarrassed about what it did the night before, and the camp gathers on the ridge to survey the wreckage of everything Derek built his authority on. Half the old shelters are gone, the supply crate is gone, and standing there in the wreckage of his own leadership, Derek does the one thing I genuinely didn't see coming. He turns the blame on me. "This is what happens," he says, loud, desperate, grabbing at the only narrative that keeps him in charge. When someone runs off with resources that are supposed to be shared. If Eli had built that shelter for all of us instead of sneaking off to play hero on his own, we wouldn't have lost the supplies. For a second, actual silence. I feel the old instinct rising in me, the one that made me the invisible guy back home, the urge to just take it, to apologize for existing, to shrink. Then I feel the panel on my wrist pulse, warm against my skin, almost like it's steadying me, and something in me just refuses to shrink this time. "You told me to build it alone," I say, and my voice doesn't shake, which honestly surprises me more than anyone else. In front of everyone, you laughed, and last night, while I was pulling people out of the water, you were digging through wreckage for supplies to keep for yourself. "That's not—" "Todd saw you," I say, and Todd, soaked and shivering beside me, doesn't say a word, just nods, slow and certain, and that single nod does more damage to Derek than anything I could have said. I watch it happen in real time, the exact moment Derek Kessler's authority collapses in front of everyone who's been propping it up out of fear. Nobody cheers, nobody throws a punch. It's quieter than that, and somehow worse for him. Just a dozen exhausted, soaked survivors, slowly, silently turning their attention away from him, and toward the ridge, toward the shelter that held, toward the guy who spent 2 weeks being laughed at, while quietly building the only thing on this island that actually worked. Derek opens his mouth to say something else, and then closes it again, because for the first time since I met him, he doesn't have an audience left who's willing to listen. That's the moment the core chooses to interrupt with the loudest, most impossible alert I've seen yet. One that makes every single person on that ridge go dead silent. Core threshold reached. Survival probability, 52%. Terraform range expanded. Structural defense online. The ground doesn't just hum this time. It shudders, a slow, rolling wave of motion spreading out from where I'm standing, and in front of a dozen stunned survivors, the ridge itself begins to change. Dead trees blooming, cracked earth smoothing into terraced ground perfect for planting, a wall of packed stone rising slow and deliberate along the tree line, like the island itself has decided to fight back against whatever comes next. 52%, somewhere between drowning in a storm and standing my ground against a man who'd rather steal supplies than save lives, I crossed the halfway point. For the first time since I woke up on that beach, the odds are finally, actually in my favor. Derek stares at the transformed ridge, at the wall rising out of the earth, at every survivor's face slowly turning toward me instead of him, and I watch something break behind his eyes. Something that isn't shame, isn't guilt, it's fear. Real fear, the kind that comes from realizing the guy you spent 2 weeks humiliating just became the only reason anyone on this island is still breathing. "What the hell are you?" he says, and it's not really a question. I don't answer right away. Partly because I genuinely don't know the full answer yet. Partly because, for the first time in my entire life, I've earned the right to let someone else sit in the silence for once. The days after the storm move faster than anything before them, like the island itself has decided it's done wasting time. With the survivors finally listening instead of laughing, the terraformed ridge grows into something that actually deserves the word paradise. A proper wall along the exposed tree line. Terraced gardens that the core somehow seeds overnight with fruit that shouldn't grow this fast anywhere on Earth. A freshwater spring that never runs dry. People who spent 2 weeks flinching every time the wind picked up start sleeping through full nights for the first time since the ship went down. Derek doesn't leave. I half expect him to, pride being what it is, but there's nowhere on this island safer than where I am now, and even he's not proud enough to march back down to a flooded beach out of spite. Instead he just fades. Quiet, useless, watching from the edges, while people who used to hang on his every word now come to me instead, asking what needs building next, what needs planting, what the core has planned. It's not a victory I particularly enjoy. It's just true. Todd becomes something like my first lieutenant, if a guy this anxious can be a lieutenant of anything, sketching out planting rotations from what little he half remembers from a college botany class he never finished. Mira, the woman who never trusted Derek's storm cloud confidence from day one, turns out to have been a wilderness paramedic before the cruise, and between the two of them and the slow, steady climb of my survival number, the camp stops feeling like a group of strangers waiting to die, and starts feeling, impossibly, like something worth protecting. I should have known it wouldn't stay that easy. It's Mira who notices it first, 3 nights after the storm, staring out past the new stone wall toward the deep jungle at the center of the island, the part none of us have dared explore yet. "There are lights out there," she says quietly, and when I follow her gaze, she's right. Faint, pale, moving in slow patterns too deliberate to be fireflies, deep in the tree line where the wolf things came from, where the core's earliest warnings all pointed and told me not to go. The panel on my wrist flares to life without me even asking, text scrolling faster than I can fully read, but one line stays lit longer than the rest, glowing steady and cold against my skin. "Warning, secondary core detected, ownership contested." I stare at those words for a long time, the fire crackling behind me, the camp finally, fragilely at peace for the first time since we all washed up on this island. A secondary core, ownership contested. Which means somewhere out there in the dark heart of this island, something, or someone, else has been building too. And whatever it is, it just noticed me. "That's the good part," Todd says nervously, reading the same warning over my shoulder. "Right? More cores means more power?" I don't answer him, because the honest answer is that I have no idea, and because deep down, in the part of me that's learned more about survival in 2 weeks than I did in 26 years, I already know exactly what this means. 52% was never the finish line. It was just the first door. Somewhere past that wall of trees, something has been watching me build my paradise from the very beginning, and it's decided it's finally time to introduce itself. The trap doesn't look like a trap. That's the whole problem. It looks like a slab of stone half swallowed by roots, carved with lines that glow the same soft blue as the panel on my wrist. And the second my fingers brush the edge of it, the entire chamber drops 6 inches with a grinding, stone-on-stone shriek that I feel in my teeth. Dust rains from the ceiling. Somewhere behind me, Mira screams my name, and the floor, the actual floor under my boots, starts sliding backward into the dark, like the island just decided it wants to eat me twice. I don't know yet whose bones I'm about to find at the bottom of this place. I don't know that the wristband on my arm has a twin buried in the dirt not 30 feet from where I'm standing, waiting to ruin my entire understanding of who's safe on this island and who isn't. All I know, in the half second before the ground gives out completely, is that I'm falling again, and apparently that's just going to be my thing now. 3 days earlier, none of this felt like a good idea. The pale lights hadn't stopped. That was the part that got to everyone, more than the wolf things, more than the storm, more than Derek's slow, sulking fall from grace. Every night since Mira first spotted them, they came back, deep in the jungle where the trees grow so thick the moon doesn't bother trying, flickering in patterns too deliberate to be bugs or bioluminescent nonsense. My panel had a name for it now. Secondary core detected. Ownership contested. 2 words I'd read so many times they'd stopped meaning anything and started just meaning dread. "You're not seriously thinking about going out there," Todd says. For probably the 5th time that morning, following me around camp with the specific nervous energy of a guy who already knows he's going to end up going anyway. "We have a wall now. Walls are good." Walls mean staying behind them. "The core's been pointing me toward it since the storm," I tell him, checking the edge on a spear I really hope I don't need. It's not exactly subtle about it either. Todd makes a face like he swallowed something sour. "Since when do we take life advice from the glowing arm computer that once told you to collect sticks?" "Since the glowing arm computer got me to 52%. He doesn't have a comeback for that one. Nobody really does, these days. 52% has bought me a strange kind of authority around camp, the sort you don't ask for, and can't really turn down once people start giving it to you. I used to be invisible. Now people watch what I do with my hands like it's going to tell them whether tomorrow is safe. Mira's the one who actually convinces me it's worth the risk, mostly because she's the one who never needed convincing in the first place. If there's another core out there," she says, arms crossed, watching the tree line with the same flat assessing look she probably used back when she was pulling people off collapsed buildings for a living, "I want to know before it knows more about us than we know about it." I don't ask how she knows to think that way. Not yet. There's a version of this story where I notice sooner that Mira reads the island like someone who's read places like it before, but that's a thread for another day. Today I've got a jungle to walk into, and a survival percentage that apparently thinks I'm ready for it. We put together a scouting party by the fire that night, small and quiet, because the last thing camp needs is a mass panic about the mysterious lights swallowing half our able-bodied survivors. Me, Mira, a guy named Sam who used to do trail guiding back home and knows how to move through brush without sounding like a dying elephant. 3 of us, a couple days of supplies, and my panel glowing faint and steady on my wrist like it's excited. Derek asks to come. I say no. It isn't cruel, it's just honest. The kind of honest I couldn't have managed 3 weeks ago. He doesn't argue, which is somehow worse than if he had. He just nods, jaw tight, and walks off toward the wall he's been quietly reinforcing every day since the storm, without anyone asking him to. One more small, silent thing nobody thanks him for. I should have known that wasn't the end of it. Guys like Derek don't do quiet acceptance. They do quiet plans. We leave at first light, and the jungle past our wall is a different animal than the jungle I've spent 2 weeks taming into something livable. Out here, the trees grow close enough to choke the sky, roots thick as my arm humping up out of ground that feels wrong under my boots, spongy in some places, brittle in others, like the island itself hasn't decided what it wants to be this deep in. My panel keeps flickering warnings I mostly already know: unstable terrain, hostile proximity, moderate, threat level rising. Helpful, I mutter, real specific. Talking to your wrist again, Sam says, not even looking back, machete swinging in a slow, practiced rhythm to clear the path. It's a whole personality. You get used to it. The first 2 hours are almost boring, which after everything that's happened to me on this island, feels like its own kind of red flag. Boring means the island's saving something up. I've learned that much the hard way. We hike, We drink water from a stream my core flags as clean. We eat dried fruit that Todd would have a whole speech about the nutritional value of if he were here, and the pale lights get closer with every mile, glowing steady now even in daylight, bleeding through gaps in the canopy like something's leaking. Then Mira stops dead in the middle of the trail, hand up, and every joke dies in my throat. "Do you hear that?" she says, low. I don't, not at first. Then I do, a hum. Low, deep, rhythmic, the exact same frequency as the ground under my feet the morning I first woke up on this island, except bigger somehow, older, like the difference between a single heartbeat and an entire chest full of them beating in sync. My panel lights up without me asking. Core signature strengthening. Proceed with caution. When has proceeding with caution ever been an option on this island, I say, mostly to myself, and step forward anyway, because apparently that's just who I am now, the guy who walks toward the hum instead of away from it. The trees thin out ahead of us into a clearing, and what's standing in the middle of it steals every joke I had left. Ruins. Actual ruins, stone-worn smooth by time and rain, half swallowed by roots and vines but unmistakably built by something with hands. Arranged in a rough circle around a central structure that rises maybe 20 feet, carved with the same glowing lines as my panel, pulsing slow and blue, like the whole thing is breathing along with the hum in the ground. It isn't ancient in the crumbling, dead way old buildings usually are. It's ancient in the way that makes the hair on my arms stand up, like whatever built this hasn't finished being here yet. That, Sam says, very quietly, was not on the cruise brochure. Nobody laughs. Mira's already moving toward it, careful, methodical, the way you'd approach a crime scene instead of a jungle temple, and something about her posture makes me realize this isn't the first time she's looked at something like this and known exactly how much danger it represents. "You've seen something like this before," I say. It isn't a question. She doesn't answer right away. When she does, her voice is flat in a way I've learned means she's choosing her words carefully. "I've seen pictures. Before the cruise. It's a long story, Eli. Ask me again, after we're not standing in the middle of it." I file that away, right next to the growing pile of things I clearly don't know about the woman who saved half our camp with a first aid kit and pure stubbornness. Some other day. Today the ruins have my full attention, because the closer we get, the more my panel starts screaming information at me faster than I can read it. Anchor resonance detected. Previous anchor data found. Accessing. Previous, I say out loud, and the word sits wrong in my mouth, as in, before me. The inside of the central structure is cooler than it has any right to be, the air thick and still, lit only by the pulsing blue lines running through the stone like veins. And along the curved walls, carved into the rock in a way that looks almost deliberate, almost like a record someone wanted found, are marks. Dozens of them. Small vertical lines, grouped in fives, the universal shorthand for counting days, or counting something. My panel translates it before I can ask. Anchor log detected. 7 previous hosts. Status, deceased. 7. I stand there long enough that Mira has to say my name twice before it lands. 7 people had this, I say, my voice smaller than I want it to be. 7 people stood exactly where I'm standing, got exactly what I got, and none of them made it. "You don't know that means what you think it means," Mira says. But even she doesn't sound fully convinced, eyes scanning the marks with the same tight focus she gets when she's assessing an injury she doesn't like the look of. The system called them anchors, same word it used for me. Same everything, probably. And they're all dead. I press my palm flat against the nearest wall, and the second I do, the hum in the ground gets louder, and new text bleeds across my panel, slower this time, like something wants me to actually read it. The island does not kill its anchors. The island outlives them, choose differently. That's the exact moment the whole chamber shifts under my feet, and every ounce of dread I've been swallowing since we found this place turns out to have been justified after all. It isn't my footstep that triggers it. That's the part that would keep me up at night later, once I had time to actually think it through. It's a footstep from somewhere behind us, out past the tree line. Careless and heavy, in a way none of the 3 of us would ever move through a place like this. Derek. I don't even have to see him to know. There's a specific, particular way Derek Kessler exists in a space, loud even when he's trying to be quiet, and the second I hear a branch snap way too close for comfort, My stomach drops harder than it has since the storm. Derek, I say, sharp, turning toward the entrance. If that's you, I swear to God. He steps into the light of the ruins, looking exactly like a man who followed 3 people 2 days into a hostile jungle because he couldn't stand not being relevant anymore. Guilty and defiant at the same time. Hands raised like that's going to fix anything. I wasn't going to just sit at camp reinforcing a wall like some kind of... The floor drops before he finishes the sentence. It isn't the whole chamber, it's the section directly under him, a slab of stone giving way with a grinding shriek that echoes off every wall, and Derek doesn't even get a full scream out before he's gone, swallowed into the dark below like the island decided it had heard enough excuses out of him for one lifetime. Derek! Mira's already moving, and so am I, and that's when the second slab goes, this one under my own feet, and the ground I'm standing on starts sliding backward into a darkness that smells like old stone and older secrets. Here's the thing nobody tells you about falling into an ancient trap in the middle of a magic jungle temple. It doesn't feel dramatic while it's happening. It feels stupid. It feels like every bad decision of your entire life compressed into 4 seconds of pure, screaming panic, arms flailing, fingers scrabbling for anything solid, my panel flashing red so fast the warnings blur into one long scream of light. Fall detected. Structural collapse imminent. Brace. I hit something halfway down that isn't the bottom, a ledge, narrow and crumbling, and my hand closes around a root thick enough to hold my weight for exactly as long as it takes me to scream Derek's name into the dark below. I'm here, comes the answer, ragged, furious, alive, from somewhere further down. I'm fine, I think. Something broke my fall and I really don't want to know what. Above me, Mira's voice, tight with the specific calm of someone who's talked people through worse. Eli, don't move, I'm coming down, there's a ledge. There's always a ledge, I mutter, mostly to myself, mostly hysterical. This island loves a good ledge. What happens next takes maybe 90 seconds, and it's the longest 90 seconds of my life since the storm. Mira gets a rope from her pack, an actual honest-to-God length of rope she's apparently been carrying since we left camp, because of course she has. And between the two of us and Sam bracing above, we haul Derek up out of the dark, filthy, bleeding from a gash along his forearm, and shaking in a way I've never seen him shake before. He doesn't say thank you. Neither of us expects him to. But when his eyes meet mine, just for a second, there's something in them that wasn't there before he fell. Something that looks a lot like a man who just got a very personal, very physical reminder that he isn't invincible, and never was. You could have died, I say, once we're all back on solid ground, once the adrenaline stopped screaming quite so loud in my ears. You followed us into an unmapped ruin with an active trap system because you couldn't stand being left out of a single thing. I know, Derek says, and it's the flattest, most honest sentence I've ever heard come out of his mouth. I know, okay, I know, I don't have a comeback for that either. Some other version of me, the one from 3 weeks ago, might have wanted to press the point, to twist the knife a little, to finally get the apology I've been owed since the beach. This version of me just feels tired, and oddly, uncomfortably, a little bit sorry for him. The panel on my wrist doesn't care about any of that. It's still lit up, still pulsing, and while I'm crouched there catching my breath, it flares brighter than I've ever seen it. Text scrolling faster than I can track before locking into place. Core evolution available. Combat protocol unlocking. I stare at it. Now? You want to do this now? The system, unsurprisingly, doesn't answer questions. It just acts. The hum in the ground surges, and this time it isn't the whole chamber shaking. It's something inside me. A pressure behind my ribs that isn't pain exactly. More like every muscle in my body suddenly remembering it's capable of more than it thought it was. New text scrolls past, options I've never seen before, words like strike, brace, parry, blinking into a little menu alongside the terraforming and building options I've spent 2 weeks getting used to. It's giving me a fight tree, I say slowly, half to Mira, half to myself. It's been building me a farm this whole time, and now it's handing me a weapon. Because whatever's out here, Mira says, eyes still on the ruins, on the dark, on the 7 sets of carved lines still glowing faint on the walls above us, isn't farmland. This place wasn't built for growing things. Eli, look at it. She's right. And once she says it out loud, I can't unsee it. The carvings aren't gentle. They're not the soft, breathing lines of my terraform panels back at camp. These are sharp, angular, aggressive in a way that makes my skin crawl, and threaded through the count of 7 dead anchors is a second pattern I somehow missed the first time. Smaller marks, dozens of them, clustered near the base of the structure. Kills. I don't know how I know that's what they are. I just do. The same way I knew to walk toward the crystal in the ravine on my first morning here. Whatever this place is, it isn't a monument, it's a battlefield log. The core said the island doesn't kill its anchors, I say slowly. It said the island outlives them, which means something else is doing the killing. That's when Sam, who's been quiet this whole time, crouched near the base of the wall with his flashlight, makes a sound none of us like. Guys, he says, you need to see this. We gather around him, and for a second none of us say anything at all, because what he's found isn't more carvings, isn't more ancient warning text. It's a skeleton, old, mostly bone, half fused into the stone floor like the island slowly grew around it over years, decades maybe. The fabric of old clothing rotted down to threads that could have come from any era. It's curled in on itself the way bodies get when whatever killed them didn't happen fast. And on the wrist, half buried in dirt and time, catching the dim blue light from the walls, is a thin band of pale, translucent material, identical to mine. I don't move for a long moment. Behind me, I hear Mira's breath catch, hear Derek go completely silent for maybe the first time since I've known him, hear my own pulse pounding loud enough to drown out the ancient hum still vibrating through the floor. That's not one of the 7, Mira says quietly, kneeling to look closer, careful not to touch it. Look at the wear on the fabric. This isn't decades old, Eli. This is recent. Newer than the carvings. Newer than all of it. My panel confirms it before I can even ask. Text blooming cold and clear across the screen. And for the first time since I woke up on that beach with a 1% survival rating, I feel something colder than fear. Second active core signature detected. Location, this site. Status, living. Living. Not one of the 7 dead anchors buried in this temple's grim little scoreboard. A new one, recent. And whoever they are, whoever's wearing the twin of the band glowing on my own wrist, they've been close enough to this place, close enough to this island, close enough to everything I've built, to lose that band right here in the dirt and never come back for it. Which means one of two things. Either they're dead somewhere out there in the jungle, and this is a grave I haven't found the body for yet, or they're alive and hiding, and they've been hiding this entire time, right under my nose, right in the middle of my own camp, watching every single thing I've done since the day the ocean spat me up onto that beach.